Welcome back. Our second report now on Cyclone Nargis in Myanmar. It's been nearly a month since it swept through the country, and still the death toll continues to rise. Many in the media have blamed the government for being so slow to let foreign aid workers in. However, as the story slowly fades from the global news radar, there's another question worth asking. Do the media deserve a share of the blame for failing to warn the victims of the merciless storm heading their way? Reporting for us from both sides of the Myanmar-Thai border once again, here's Simon Ostrovsky.
In Myanmar, I got a taste of what state news coverage was like in my hotel. The two main English-language mouthpieces are MRTV3 and the New Light of Myanmar Daily.
Due to the cyclone Nargis, the population of the country now is 57,370,713.
Hardly riveting stuff.
The generals of Myanmar say they warned the population that Cyclone Nargis was about to hit using media like MRTV3 showing behind me and newspapers, but I printed out a copy of the New Light of Myanmar from the day before the storm hit, and the only thing I could find was a small storm warning on the second to last page.
I spoke to exiled Burmese journalists who monitor state media and operate from across the border in the Thai city of Chiang Mai. They said the government's failure to warn of the approach of Nargis and evacuate residents may have cost thousands of lives.
If that news is treated as a front page story, if there is a follow-up, we could prepare, we could evacuate. If not all, we may be able to save thousands of lives during the cyclone attack.
Instead, a constitutional referendum designed to strengthen the general's rule was at the top of the news agenda for the state media in the crucial days ahead of the storm.
Voting for a constitutional referendum in Burma is going ahead despite many parts of the country lying in shatters after last week's devastating cyclone. State television repeatedly encourages people to go to vote.
Government newspaper always treated the referendum as a front page story. There were survivors and cyclone victims. Millions of people become homeless overnight and suffer a lot. Yeah. But they always treated the referendum as a front page story. And during the day after the referendum was over, and the government newspapers announced that massive turnout.
Myanmar may be ruled by a dictatorship with no free media, but its citizens are nonetheless well informed. The country is bombarded with Burmese language broadcasts from the BBC, the Voice of America, and an array of dissident media outlets that Yangon has attacked before.
VOA and BBC, sky full of liars. Beware of destructionists, BBC and VOA.
The Democratic Voice of Burma is a radio and TV station with a bureau in Thailand. It's funded by the Norwegian and US governments. Its bureau chief told me that it wasn't just the government that failed to give residents of Myanmar meaningful storm warnings. His station and others share some of the blame.
We want it, but everybody failed to, I agree, everybody failed to imagine how the impact of the cyclone is. I think Burmese military government, they didn't know what are they dealing with. Yeah. And also on top of that, the problem is nobody trusts in state media, and they don't have money audience. A lot of people, including Burmese people, are very angry at the moment because government failed to warn them and failed to provide proper food.
I found out who was trying to capitalize on that anger in Mae Sot, a border town that's home to many thousands of political refugees and economic migrants from Myanmar. This exiled opposition leader was thrashing the regime in a speech to members of Myanmar's Karen ethnic minority, some of whom were receiving treatment in a charity hospital. He now doubles as a political blogger.
Now, internet user is over 100,000. Young people, especially we are targeting young people. Yeah. So they provide each other. During the 1988, we can use the pamphlet. Now the screen is a pamphlet. Yeah. When they appear, they see it, they keep it very secret. We want to tell what is going on inside Burma with the evidence by using photo or video footage.
An indication of the popularity of blogs like Motezun's inside Myanmar was the arrest of fellow blogger Ne Pon Lat in January on a charge of threatening state security. Media watchdog Reporters Without Borders says 7 journalists and a poet are also imprisoned for their work. Some of the refugees from Myanmar's latest disaster have fled to Thailand too. With stories like these abounding, it's a wonder Myanmar hasn't used the media to ask the world for aid. The lack of trucks carrying relief through the border crossing at Mae Sot made this evident. I met a Danish reporter there.
We're dealing with a very, very unusual natural disaster situation where a country and a people obviously needs help, but the government of that country refuses any kind of help. I mean, I can't remember anything like that. If you compare it to the tsunami in Bandar Aceh, the Aceh province, that was also a closed-off area. Foreigners couldn't get in there, but the Indonesian government opened up to foreign aid organizations. They opened up to the American military, and they opened up to the media.
9 days after Nargis hit, a devastating earthquake struck China, and Beijing had a different media strategy.
As soon as this tragedy unfolded, almost instantly that outrage has become sympathy for the Chinese people and what they're now suffering. And of course that has been helped by the sudden transparency of the Chinese government, which has been in direct contrast to what we've seen and heard from Burma.
China's newfound openness to the media and to international aid may be what prompted the military junta of Myanmar to tell the UN a few days ago it would ease its restrictions on aid. But with so few media voices on the ground and so many restrictions still in place, it'll be anything but easy to gauge what this latest news will mean for survivors in the Irrawaddy Delta.
Our Global Village Voices now with their take on the continuing coverage of the Myanmar cyclone.
Burmese people, they understand the importance of getting information, the reliable information out to the world, and they want the world to know that what is really happening in Burma and their lives under oppression of the military regime. And through exile media like the Democratic Voice of Burma.
The regime have done their best to get foreign journalists out of the country. Andrew Harding from the BBC was thrown out, a CNN journalist was essentially hounded out, but they simply don't care about their world standing, they don't care if this affects how the world views them, and they don't care about their people. They just want to make sure they have a total grasp on what the people inside the country know.
The regime is starting to learn from China and how they responded to the earthquake. They will be looking enviously at the initial positive headlines that the Chinese government received about rushing troops to the region, sending the premier. And we're seeing a sort of copycat techniques by the regime now. For example, they've announced 3 days of mourning, similar to China announced. So they're definitely watching what's going on in China.
Some of the coverage that could have been given to the cyclone would have been much more instrumental in pressurising government agents, government actors, particularly ASEAN and also the UN, to take a firmer stand against the junta. There's no real truth coming out and everything seems to be just shrouded in a series of lies and mystery.
If you have issues with the way the news media cover the news and you want to talk about them, just email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net and we'll find a way via webcam, maybe even camera phone, to get you on the air as one of our Global Village Voices. Finally, we go back to the Far East now for a piece of video from one of those Japanese game shows which keep on coming up with odd ways of entertaining their audiences. This time they took 2 teams of football players and handicapped them by making them wear binoculars. Like a lot of videos from Japanese game shows, this one's attracting viewers well beyond the land of the rising sun, courtesy of the World Wide Web. Japan's up-close, visionary game of football is our internet video of the week. We'll see you next time. The Listening Post.